I want you to do something right now. I want you to think about the last time you had a real conversation with another man. Not small talk, not sports, not complaints about work. A real conversation where you talked about what you're actually struggling with, where you said the thing you've been carrying alone, where another man looked you in the eye and said, "I see you, I hear you, I've been there too." When was that? For most men watching this, they're struggling to remember. Some of them can't remember at all. And that silence, that absence, that inability to even recall the last time you were truly known by another man, that is the most dangerous crisis in the lives of men right now, and nobody is talking about it. We live in the most connected era in human history. More ways to communicate than ever before, more platforms, more content, more access to more people than any generation that has ever lived. And men have never been more alone. Not alone in the physical sense necessarily. Most men are surrounded by people, co-workers, family members, people they see every day, but surrounded is not the same as known. Having people around you is not the same as having people who actually know you. Real loneliness is not about being physically alone. Real loneliness is about being unknown. It is the experience of moving through the world, through your days, your struggles, your victories, your fears, and having nobody around you who actually knows what is happening inside you. And that is the experience of the majority of men alive today. Studies are now showing that men today have fewer close friends than any generation that has been measured. The average man in his 30s has less than one close friend. Less than one. Men are reporting higher rates of loneliness than at any previous point in recorded history, and the health consequences, physical and mental, are catastrophic. Chronic loneliness has been shown to have the same impact on your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15 cigarettes a day. We have entire public health campaigns about smoking. We have warning labels on cigarette packages, but the loneliness epidemic among men, which is doing equal damage, is met with almost complete silence. Because men are not supposed to need connection. Men are not supposed to need brotherhood. Men are supposed to be self-sufficient, independent, needing nothing from nobody. And that lie, that deeply embedded cultural lie about what it means to be a strong man, is killing men, quietly, steadily, one isolated year at a time. So how did we get here? How did men end up so profoundly disconnected from each other? Because it was not always this way. Go back far enough in history, not even that far, and male brotherhood was not optional. It was survival. Men hunted together, fought together, built together, raised families in communities where other men were deeply involved in each other's lives, where a man's struggles were known to his brothers, where accountability was not a concept from a self-help book, but just the natural reality of living in close community with other men. That world did not disappear overnight. It was dismantled gradually, and it was dismantled by a combination of things that each seemed harmless or even positive on their own, but together produced a generation of men who have no idea how to be truly known by another man. The first thing that dismantled it was the shift from community to individualism. The highest value in modern Western culture is individual success, individual achievement, individual freedom. And while those things have genuine value, the relentless pursuit of individual success has come at the cost of community. Men moved away from their hometowns for opportunities. They moved away from their families for careers. They built lives in cities full of strangers and called it freedom. And in doing so, they left behind the communities, the networks of relationships built over years and decades that used to hold men together. The second thing was the digitization of connection. Social media promised connection, and in some ways it delivered a version of it, a shallow, performative, curated version that looks like connection from the outside, but produces none of the things that real connection produces. You cannot be truly known through a highlight reel. You cannot be held accountable through a comment section. You cannot be genuinely supported through a like button. But men accepted the digital substitute for the real thing, because the digital version was easier, less risky, less vulnerable. You could have the appearance of a social life without the terrifying reality of actually letting someone in. The third thing, and this is the one that cuts deepest, is the cultural attack on masculine vulnerability. Men were taught, explicitly and implicitly, that needing other people is weakness, that talking about your struggles is weakness, that admitting you're lonely, scared, overwhelmed, or lost is weakness. Real men handle their own problems. Real men don't need to talk about their feelings. Real men don't need anybody. And so men stopped reaching out. They stopped calling. They stopped going deep in their friendships. They learned to perform strength instead of build it. And the loneliness grew and grew and grew until it became the water they swim in, so constant and so familiar that most men don't even recognize it as loneliness anymore. They just call it life. I want to be real with you about what this loneliness is actually doing to you, because the consequences go far beyond feeling sad. A man without brotherhood is a man without accountability, and a man without accountability is a man whose worst habits go completely unchallenged. His pornography use, his drinking, his anger, his avoidance, his self-destruction. When there is no one watching, when there is no one who knows enough about your life to call you out, those habits compound in silence. They grow. They become the architecture of your life. I want to be real with you about what this loneliness is actually doing to you, because the consequences go far beyond feeling sad. A man without brotherhood is a man without accountability, and a man without accountability is a man whose worst habits go completely unchallenged. His pornography use, his drinking, his anger, his avoidance, his self-destruction. When there is no one watching, when there is no one who knows enough about your life to call you out, those habits compound in silence. They grow. They become the architecture of your life. A man without brotherhood is a man without perspective. He only has access to his own thoughts, his own fears, his own interpretations of reality. And when those thoughts and fears and interpretations go dark, as they do for every man at some point, there is no one to speak truth into the darkness, no one to say you are not seeing this clearly, no one to remind him of who he actually is when the voices in his head are telling him otherwise. A man without brotherhood is a man who tries to fill that void with everything else. With women, putting unfair pressure on romantic relationships to provide the connection and the knowing that should come from a community of men. With work, burying himself in achievement because achieving feels less vulnerable than connecting. With substances, with screens, with pornography, with anything that temporarily quiets the ache of being unknown. And the research backs this up. Isolated men are dramatically more likely to struggle with addiction, with depression, with anxiety, with suicide. The loneliness is not just uncomfortable, it is genuinely dangerous. Scripture says in Ecclesiastes 4:9-10, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up." God knew this about men long before the research confirmed it. You were not designed to walk alone. You were designed for brotherhood. And when you try to walk alone, when you try to carry everything by yourself, you will eventually fall. And without a brother to help you up, you may stay down longer than you needed to. I want to talk about what real brotherhood actually looks like, because most men have never experienced it. They've had friends, they've had boys, they've had people they hung out with. But real brotherhood, the kind that actually builds men, is something different. Real brotherhood is built on truth. Not the comfortable version of truth where your boys tell you what you want to hear, the real version, where the men around you love you enough to tell you when you're wrong, when you are making a bad decision, when you are repeating a pattern that is destroying you, when you are lying to yourself about where you are. That kind of honesty requires depth. It requires time. It requires a level of vulnerability and trust that most men have never allowed themselves to have with another man, because they were taught that vulnerability between men is something to be ashamed of. Real brotherhood is also built on shared mission. The strongest bonds between men have always been forged in the pursuit of something bigger than themselves. Men who are building something together, who have a shared purpose, a shared direction, a shared commitment to becoming better. Those men develop a connection that is genuinely profound, because they are not just friends, they are brothers in arms, they are witnesses to each other's transformation. The Book of Enoch speaks of men who walked together in alignment, who were accountable to each other, to truth, to their divine calling. That image of men walking together, not alone, not performing independence, but genuinely known and genuinely knowing, that is the model of brotherhood that was always intended for men. And the men who have that, the men who have even one brother like that in their lives, they are fundamentally different from the men who don't. More grounded, more resilient, more able to weather the hard seasons, more able to become the men they were designed to be. Because a man who is truly known, who has a brother who sees him, challenges him and stands with him, that man has something to build from, something to come back to, something that makes the lonely nights shorter and the hard decisions clearer and the long road forward bearable. So what do you actually do? How do you build real brotherhood when the culture around you has made it harder than it has ever been? First, you have to be willing to go first. Someone has to go first. Someone has to be willing to be vulnerable before the other person has proven they are safe. Most men wait for the other person to open up before they open up, and so both men wait. And the conversation stays surface level, and the friendship stays shallow, and the loneliness continues. Go first. Say the real thing, not to everyone, but to one man who has shown himself to be trustworthy. Take the risk, because on the other side of that risk is the beginning of something real. Second, invest in the men already in your life. Most men have people around them who could become brothers if they were willing to go deeper. The co-worker you always enjoy talking to, the man from church you respect, the old friend you've lost touch with. Reach out, suggest something real, not just a drink, an intentional conversation, a walk, a real question. Most men are as lonely as you are and waiting for someone to make the first move. Third, find communities of men who are doing the work, a gym, a faith community, a men's group, a brotherhood that exists around a shared mission or a shared commitment to growth. These communities exist. They are growing because men are desperate for real connection even if they don't know how to ask for it. Find one, show up consistently, let yourself be known. Fourth, be the kind of man that other good men want to be around. Men who are building something attract men who are building something. Men who are doing the work attract men who are doing the work. Your brotherhood starts with your own commitment to becoming the man God designed you to be. That commitment, that visible, consistent, real commitment to your own growth, is the most powerful magnet for the right men. You were not built for this level of isolation. You were built for brotherhood. And the loneliness you have been carrying for years, maybe for decades, that is not a personality trait. That is not just the way things are. That is a wound that can be healed by the right community of the right men. Go find them, or better yet, become the man they are looking for, and let them find you. The loneliest generation of men in history, that is what we are. Not because we are weaker than the men who came before us, but because the world we were handed stripped away the structures, the communities, the rites of passage, the cultures of masculine brotherhood, that used to make deep connection between men natural and normal. But stripped away does not mean gone forever. It means we have to rebuild it intentionally, deliberately, one real conversation at a time, one vulnerable moment at a time, one brotherhood at a time. You were not designed to do this alone. You never were. And the life you are trying to build, the king you are trying to become, you will build it faster, stronger, and better with brothers beside you than you will ever build it alone. Find your brothers. Be a brother, and never underestimate what a man who is truly known can become. Walk with God while you work for the crown. When he crowns you king, tell the world of the truth you found. That's king-level mindset. Kings don't beg, kings don't bow, kings build.